right. It's the nukes that must go and not me. It's the nukes that must go and not me, my friends. The nukes that must go and not me. Different key. Different key for
any key. Pick a key.
I'm locked out. I don't have the key.
None of us will be on the key. I'm right to the key anyway, so.
I love every flower and tree. Expect to live till I'm 90. It's the nukes that must go and not me. It's the nukes that must go and not me, my friends. The nukes that must go and not me. I expect to live here till I'm 90. It's the nukes that must go and not me. I swallowed enough radiation. It is time I was standing my ground. I'm joining that great occupation. We're shutting that power plant down. We're shutting that power plant down, my friends. We're shutting that power plant down. That great occupation. We're shutting that power plant down. Hampshire's a swell town. It's there that we're taking our stand. Why sit home and wait for a meltdown? Come fight for your freedom and land. Come fight for your freedom and land, my friends. Come fight for your freedom and land. Don't sit home and wait for a meltdown. Come fight for your freedom and land. Seabrook is just a beginning. We'll soon have the nukes on the run. And they are. It's a fight that the people are winning. A fight for a place in the sun. It's a fight for a place in the sun, my friends. A fight for a place in the sun. It's a fight that the people are winning. A fight for a place in the sun. We're straightening that land with a vision, exposing the PSC sham. Sit on my happy condition, surrounded by acres of clams. Surrounded by acres of clams, my friends. Surrounded by acres of clams. I sing of my happy condition, surrounded by acres of clams. Surrounded by acres of clams, my friends. Surrounded by acres of clams. I sing of my happy condition, surrounded by acres.
Our agenda is a little loose and fuzzy and squishy, but I think we wanted, first of all, Renny might have a word or two to say, and other people have a word or two to say, and word upon word builds a fine gathering.
Well said.
Well said. So I want to say something, and that's happy anniversary to Clamshell. It just struck me when I woke up. Well, I went to bed last night. I was thinking 45 years ago, was with a group of happy people down at the Gustafson's farm, Crooked Chimney Farm in Hampton Falls, doing this we're going to train ourselves because we're going to do some civil resistance. And then 45 years ago today, it was kind of it was the time that 18 of us decided to depart from the end of Depot Lane in Hampton Falls, walk down the railroad tracks, armed with some saplings and corn seed to go begin the reclamation of the proposed Seabrook atomic plant, and ended up 18 of us ended up getting arrested in the first action of the Clamshell Alliance, which was also kind of the first mass or group civil resistance action that led to the emergence of the resistance to civilian nuclear technology. It was great being there. My memories are of everyone, Paul, having to suffer this wicked abuse from the police who purposely were yanking him because he's a big, tall target from that, and I also thought of the headline the next day where nuke protest fizzled was in the Hampton. It was the Manchester Union Leader, and then 3 weeks later there's 180 people that replicated the same thing. One, of course, it turned out ended up being a New Hampshire State Police, but that's another thing we could ponder about for years. And then 9 months later, you know, there's the largest mass arrest in the history of the state of New Hampshire. 1,400 people end up there, and really kind of launched a much wider movement. So I wake up 45 years later feeling really thankful for that. And it's always, it seems like, you know, you want to have a little auspicious, you know, it seems like a nice auspicious day. So, and I'm just thankful because I know that, like, I know Lynn and I know Paul, and people say, well, it's like a good time for gathering. As people do know, this is, I'm also in the middle of a going away party for myself, because my, you know, notwithstanding the aspirations to live till I'm 90 and that the nukes must go, not me, I've got a little engagement now with some cancer, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to go about doing this dying. So goodbye, but it's nice to have the opportunity to be here at what I think of as a family reunion. Because when you're dying, it does kind of tend to focus your attention on a few things, like what was your life about. And one thing that I've come to realize, and I always knew, but I come to realize more appreciation, is how important family is, how much my family is. And family is not people you work with, it's family who are part of the totality of your life. And I think now I have, you know, 3 families. I obviously have my biological and chosen family, which is everything I'm about. But I also have this family, like, you know, my clamshell, our clamshell family, which transcends like years and months and, you know, decades. And it's the people when, you know, when it's really intense times. It's the folks that, like, you know, the Robert Frost poem, that home's the place that when you go there, they have to let you in. So this is like a little gathering of people that, you know, friends are here and they have to let you in. So I think of that. And I also think of my anti-death penalty family, too, which is another family that I'm blessed to be part of. And so I'm feeling kind of appreciative. I will have to say, there's a term I didn't really know, I only learned in the past year, of humble bragging, which I still don't quite get it, but what it means. But my humble brag is like this last week, kind of to much surprise, someone sent me a copy of remarks that were put in the Congressional Record by Jamie Raskin about me, and it was like talked about the Clamshell Alliance, and I just something that jumped out at me, because I know over the past 40 years the Clamshell Alliance may have had some notoriety, you know, and I can't think of Lynn LaRouche or whatever stuff it was, but just the fact that, you know, like my family gets mentioned, the Clamshell Alliance gets mentioned in the Congressional Record. Part of me thought, like, well, for such an outlaw group, for such a, you know, ragtag bunch of people that tried to transform our discussion about energy and about power, and say, that's kind of an, you know, an interesting anomaly. So it's my humble bragging is to say all that. And I could probably go around and say thanks to everybody, but that get a little boring. But I'll say thanks to everybody all at once. I'm really blessed. I'm really blessed, and I'm a little pissed off that I'm going to go before the nuke Seabrook shut down. I can't do it, so I'm gonna like leave it to the rest of the family to take care of that. You want to make sure it's done. And the other thing, part of like I'm trying to do, like, you know, as I'm saying goodbye, uncharacteristically, I'm trying to like do a little bit of planning. It's hard when you don't have I don't have like a date I can say, I know I'm going to say goodbye. I have like a general time frame. But I'm also trying to actually get a little ordered. One of the things that I feel, and I know we've done that, we've tried to do this, it's an ongoing process of trying to figure out how you know, hold together the legacy, how you transmit the legacy. It's the responsibility that we all have to take the things that we've learned and share them with others, so that we can all keep bending that moral arc of the universe a little bit closer toward justice every day. And sometimes I think I haven't been as responsible, haven't been as deliberative about doing that. But I'm trying to like take whatever stuff because I ended up I got a few old posters, t-shirts, minutes, but to try to put those in a way that can be accessible, and also do away with, just also, there's a certain limitation on the amount of stuff I can take with me when I go. So I'm making sure I can't stuff all those folders and file things into the casket, and they might. One of the things I am doing, it's like some of my t-shirts. It's been a great joy to be able to give some of my t-shirts, particularly to my kids, who always loved the No Nukes t-shirt that happened, 20 years before I was born or stuff like that. They kind of get a kick, and it's a way that they can explain. But I also, have tried to give it other things, and so. One of the things I thought about is somewhere along the line, I did obtain this very nice Seabrook Station hat that I thought of taking it with me. But upon reflection, I know that it still has some wear left to it. So I just want to, in honor of the 45th anniversary of the first arrest, Clamshell Alliance, I want to bequeath this. Now, this is like distribution of the estate assets. I'm going to do it in advance, and I'm going to give this to Paul.
Thank you very much.
I know Paul will make good use of it.
This is my coffee cup now.
There we go. So we're all set. It's on Paul now. All the responsibility of that hat. Oh, geez, now I'm going to have to give another thing away. That's no, I am under strict orders. No more T-shirts, no more coffee mugs. No, please don't. No more files, no more. I cannot acquire further archives. That's completely counterproductive. I'm getting Marie, my oldest daughter's. We're loading up some boxes on Monday. Monday's going to be very traumatic because we're loading up a bunch of boxes of all my files to ship off to UMass Amherst to that special collections. Which, I know I've had more moral angst over this because I'm so parochial. Most of my work has been in New Hampshire, although I've done other work nationally and internationally. And it was an intense political decision to bequeath my crap to out of state. It is a land-grant college, so I'm responsible for that. It's probably the fact that I dumped stuff at UNH before, and all they've been doing, they're in the same boxes that they were in when I just dumped the boxes. No one's looking. It doesn't make them too accessible. Not that I think that there's anything profound that's in any of that stuff, but for some folks it might be interesting there. So I'm having my separation anxiety this weekend. Thank you all for helping me get through it. Marie's going to help me haul shit out to UMass Amherst on Monday and see if they can process it.
Are they promising to do better curation? I mean, are they?
Oh yeah. It's like it's a dream curation what they're proposing.
Really?
Because I do have all this intersectionality of stuff. I have like 40 years worth of posters because I just assembled them, but all the different. And when I say like clamshell, that's like tangential for Seabrook, for the struggle for social justice in New Hampshire, for all the little iterations and groups of the campaign for ratepayers' rights, and ready to stop everything and everywhere that's bad. Of course there's a nexus between the struggle against Seabrook and the struggle against apartheid in South Africa, because Public Service Company in New Hampshire wants to use uranium to power that. We managed to. One of the nice things about all the work we've done is I think deliberately or sometimes unconsciously, we've always been able to do the intersectionality of stuff in Hampshire, which is real important, because otherwise we get stuck in silos. We don't really make mistakes. Anyway, so I love you all. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for the family reunion. I'm done.
Renny, thank you.
Before we go any further, I have to observe that there's 18 people around this circle.
Oh,
It's kind of a magic number.
So if this were a Quaker gathering, there would be a little bit of silence after everybody speaks to give things a little chance to settle in. So I just think that might be a good practice for us if there are people who have something they want to say, to be able to say it, understanding that other people have things they want to say too, but that we listen to each other and give a little chance for things to sink in.
Just one other thing, but I just want to emphasize to people. Obviously, I'm not dead yet, so as I'm trying to negotiate that, people like, yeah, well, obviously, I think I'm able to put some cohesive sentences together. And the other thing, interestingly enough, is like, you talk about families. There's kind of a confluence of two families because also my sister-in-law, Christy's sister, and her daughter, my niece, are coming. My sister flew up from Florida. My niece flew up from out from San Diego. They came out here this weekend for the purposes of seeing me and seeing me, whatever that's going to be. So I'm having another Conrad family reunion this afternoon that I have to get to see things. So it's like my two good families. It's like, wow, what a day of riches, huh?
From the comrades.
Comrades to the cool. My Conrad reunion of the Conrads. Christy will love that one. Okay.
So, you look really good. Have you thought about what you're going to do if you don't die?
I'm flexible. Jay, the problem is I got plenty of projects going on. That's the thing. If I don't die, that's fine. I'm not going to complain. I understand. I'm not, I am not, I'm not Newman. If it happens, it happens. I'm not precluding the fact that I might get, win mega bucks or something like that. I'm just, I have honest conversations with my oncologist. I know where, I'm trying to listen to it. You caught me at a good day, as you well know. Sometimes it's like a few days I can't quite get out of bed. And notwithstanding everything else, I do kind of believe in science. On this Sunday morning, I'm really glad for steroids, pain meds, and chemo, because I get to have this is like a high quality moment, and I can't do anything about stuff. I can't do anything about. I try not to waste too much time. Not waste time, but it's not a pity party, and it's also like, wow, what else can I do? I'm open. I'm trying to make an informed decision. If I get lucky, I get lucky. I've already been lucky for 69 years. So take whatever.
That's right.
And so have we.
Yes.
So I'll put it back to you, Jay. What are you going to do if I don't die?
I got a couple of good plans, bro.
All right. I'm ready. I'm open to try surfing again. I don't know about helping bait those lobster traps. But,
Tell us about your skydiving trip, Renny.
I just jumped out of an airplane. I went skydiving.
Lately?
Huh?
Lately?
Yeah. I went actually. My middle daughter, Elizabeth, is she's got fear of heights. So in order to fear of heights, she decided she would jump out of an airplane. So she asked me. She said, "Pa, I'm going to jump out of an airplane." She had this, and she said, "You want to come watch?" And I went, "Well, why don't I just come?" So she signed up, and then she signed me up. And then my youngest daughter, Grace, found out that we were doing it. So she decided surreptitiously to kind of come back and fly. So the three of us went to the little Sky Jump New England near Sanford. I can't remember what town it is. And went 2 miles up, looked down, got strapped down, and came down and jumped out of an airplane and saw it. It was like, it is, I'll just say, if you look at something doing, it's a rush. I mean, plus you're up there like I'm zinging down and like, oh my God. And it's like these tiny little things. It is definitely a rush. And then the shoot up, and plus you're up, I can see like, oh, there's like Portland, Boston, Lake Winnipesaukee, Mount Washington, kind of going down. And so it was what it ended up being is an early Father's Day present. So it was myself and two of my daughters jumping out of an airplane. But then I will tell you, so like 2 weeks ago, I was down at Boston seeing my oncologist, and he's going like, it was like a serious moment, and he just tells me, it's like, Renny, no more skydiving. No more skydiving, and take your pain meds. You know, you're getting no rewards for not taking your pain meds. So I'm trying to be responsible. I realize like it's not really good for me to be reckless or to do stuff that is going to end up adding additional burden to people who are already going to be burdened by because they love me and taking care of me. So I'm not going to go skydiving because if I break bones when you have stage 4 prostate cancer, it's really not good for anybody. This is, see, concession to responsibility. I'm maturing. I'm trying to act responsible.
How's Elizabeth Spear Heights?
She jumped out of an airplane. She's fine on it. It's like it's overcoming that. Both her and Grace really liked it.
Okay.
Of course, then I just, I forward this stuff like last week, like the news about woman dies in skydiving accident. You'll sign. I've never seen I don't even know how many pieces of paper I sign my initials on yet. But this is a whole world out there of skydiving. They're the skydivers. They work at the snack bar so they can go jump for nothing. They travel around, and it's different than surfing. It's like skiing or skateboarding or skiing or whatever people have for an enjoyment. Some people just like that idea of going a couple miles up in the air and pummeling back to the earth, tempting fate.
Have you ever done scuba diving?
Not scuba.
Scuba?
I've done snorkeling.
Adventures.
Didn't have a principal objections.
Did we hear the story about Renny, Father Renny and Jay?
And the lobster liberation.
Yeah,
Corps?
but can we hear about a little bit, just maybe 2 minutes?
I couldn't quite hear what you said.
Oh, that.
Jay heard.
Jay wrote me. It started right here at World Fellowship when Jay roped me into helping him out with a project he was undertaking.
So I got asked by some Buddhist friends if they could buy a bunch of lobsters from me and take them out and let them go. So we were sitting around here at 2 in the morning after some drinks, and somebody said, "What's new?" So I said, "Hey, I'm taking these Buddhists out next week to let some lobsters go." Everyone started laughing, Randy especially. So he had apparently just been to the Vatican to get some money for murder victims, and he said to me, while I was there, I got this priest costume because, I always wanted to be a priest. And he said, "You haven't really lived till you dress up like a priest and tool around the Vatican." I'll open doors for you. So he said, "I'll tell you what, I'll bring my video camera." It was a while ago, and I'll put my priest uniform on, and I'll come down and I'll videotape the thing. So I didn't tell any of the Buddhists. I didn't even tell my crewmen. Renny married Ann and I, so I said to people, that I feel a little funny with this Buddhism stuff. I'd kind of like to have my priest there. Married us. I'm into doing other things with religion, but is that okay? They were like, great, So he comes down, of course, he's got a little bit of a pot belly. He's super Irish. He looked just like all the rest of them. Except he has a kind look in his eyes. Because he's not a priest. So he comes down, and everyone thinks, yeah, here comes Jay's priest, So he walks on the boat, and I'll never forget, there was a Buddhist monk there who was Mexican ancestry, and he walks up to Renny and he goes, "Father, I'm so excited to be doing this interfaith thing with you." He said, "This is awesome, And then we took an immediate picture where I'm arm in arm with the monk on one side and Father Cushing on the other. One of my favorite all-time pictures. Ear to ear laugh. So the monk says to him, he goes, "What do you think the difference is between the Buddha and the Trinity?" It's the first question before he even walks up. I'm like, she doesn't fucking know. And the whole day was just like that. The whole day. And so then, you know, we got all the lobsters and they said some prayers and then we let them go. And it was a nice thing, you know.
But wait, Jay, we had the ceremony in the porn studio too. That's a very
Yeah, I love that. So another friend of mine had a photography studio down on the waterfront where he was doing some kind of bad porn, which I was always lecturing him about the oppressive nature of it. He didn't want to hear it. He volunteered his ceremony, ended up dating Christina, one of the Buddhists, for a long, long time, and Renny and I would always joke that Buddha brought them together in a porn studio. So they put all the lobsters in front, and then they said some prayers, and it was going on and on. I'm like, yo, guys, they're all fucking dying. You know? We're gonna let them go. We're gonna get them in the water. It's hot in here. Like, a couple less prayers. So we carried them all down and let them go in this little inlet where only I fish. You know, I ended up catching like 70% of them. And so it was so funny. So then, and nice. It was a nice thing. Everyone had a nice day. We gave them a nice talk. You know, we entertained them. It was cheaper than a ball game. It was a boat ride. It was really a nice thing, all in all. After we'd been laughing about it for, a month and a half before it happened.
Jay's steaming. First of all, they can't figure out all the other lobsters and all the other fishermen. What the hell is Jay doing? It's like the beginning of a brand new program, the catch and release program for lobsters. Jay's on the cutting edge. It's like, what the hell is he doing? And they all know, like, they see Jay steaming up to his place where they know he sets his traps, and they're all, what the hell is Jay doing? He's got this boatload of people that are taking, and they're taking the bands off the lobsters that Jay had just had banded up, and they're dropping $1,000 worth of $2,000 worth of lobster back in that Jay had just caught, so he can go back, set his traps, and get them the next day. And it's like, what is Jay doing, man? This whole thing.
So it was great. We literally laughed so much. So then they come in. They gave me $1,100 bills to pay for the lobsters. So I had on a pair of shorts and a T-shirt, but Father Cushing had his suit coat, so I gave him the money, put it in his priestly pocket, I said, well, Father, you're in Gloucester. Let me take you to a 4-star restaurant for dinner. It's what you do with your priest, right? They like to spook, So we go to this 4-star restaurant, and we're having some drinks, and we're just laughing and laughing about the day. And the bartender is a local, very Italian Catholic girl. And so she's looking at me. I'd done a little bit of business with them, and she kind of knows me. And she's looking at the priest, and she's thinking, oh, I guess that's okay. They'll laugh. And priests are human, too. They can laugh, But we're really laughing, and we're really carrying on. We're doing a little drinking. And after a couple of hours, she looks at Renny with this, like, open-hearted, these open eyes, and she says, Father, I've had very few women look at me this way in my entire life. Father, can I ask you something? And I'm like, fucking priest. No wonder they're always getting in trouble. She said, when I drive by, there was a local church that they had sold to condominiums to pay for the pedophile lawsuits. She said, when I drive by St. Peter's and I see the cross on the condominiums, it really bothers me. Father, what do you think about that? And Father Cushing, without missing a beat, he reaches across the bar and he puts her arm on her shoulder. And he says, dear, you can be sure all those damn pedophiles are going to burn in hell.
You can be sure.
She felt better, She was like, it was really touching, and I was trying not to laugh. I had to run in the bathroom and have a spasm because it was so serious. But it was beautiful. And then we finished dinner, so we're cruising around downtown Gloucester, and I volunteered at the senior center there for like 40 years. So I know at the time a lot of the older people. And a lot of the people I knew, they were Catholics, they would come up and they would see me with a priest, and they want to come and they want to get some of that priest vibe on them, And then I'd see some people from the waterfront and they'd kind of go like this, oh Jesus. We're arm in arm, shit-faced. Going around downtown Gloucester, laughing and laughing. The next morning I woke up so hoarse that I couldn't even talk from the laughter. Really funny.
And the WBUR story.
Oh, so then the Buddhist that ended up dating Alan, the dude that ran the porn studio, it was a photographer. It was something he got into, but it was not okay. So she made a show for the Buddhist Network. Put a lot of time in it. She was a producer for NPR, Christina. She's actually dying as we speak. You know, she made this really nice show. I never saw it, but I heard that it was really well put together. And, you know, she put a lot of time into it. Like she told me 3 weeks, and she's very charming, impeccable manners. You know, thoughtful, typical nuclear-powered radio journalist. Kind of believes the system's been good to her. I love her so much. Dear friend, but kind of, you know what I'm trying to say. So she comes and she knocks on my. So Sam Fleming was her boss at NPR, and she had asked. One point they were doing an oral history of Gloucester, and I have a friend who's a big Trump guy, and I said, oh, I'll get Captain Billy and me, and we'll do it back, because we love each other, we'll do it back and forth about Gloucester, it'll be really cool. But being the good corporate doobie that she is, she said to her boss, he's a little bit of a radical, you know, he was in the Clamshell Alliance, and she said, oh really? Ask him if he knows Renny Cushing. At which point she said to him, Father Cushing.
Oh my gosh.
That fucking guy. We're off with my girlfriend or something. He's still pissed at him, you know.
That was my brother ran off with his girlfriend.
So Christina, this like impeccably mannered, charming woman, drives to my house, knocks on the door. I open the door. You asshole! She slugs me like the last person in the world you would ever expect to be slugged by. I mean, the very last. I spent 3.5 weeks every night working on that program, and now I gotta take it down because of you and your asshole friend. And mostly she was pissed that she had no idea that he wasn't a creep. Crack journalist that she was. So it was a fun day. I still got a couple of photos.
They didn't get you back next year to give those lobster away,
No,
though.
now it's something that they do every year, but of course,
That was you.
I see the other boat go by.
See that money tucked in somebody else's pocket.
Yeah, that's good.
It was so funny. So,
Yeah.
and nobody had any idea. My crewman's at the time was kind of a Catholic Portuguese dude, and he had no fucking idea.
It's fun.
Wait, does the priest outfit go to the archives or to a child?
I'm wearing it with me. I think I need all the help I can get.
You may want to rethink that.
What was the answer between the Trinity and the Buddha when you asked that question?
The answer is, I think, the Lord works in mysterious ways. And there may come a time where, as the church has, reflects upon things and sees change, there may be a confluence between the perspective of the teaching of Buddha and the teachings of that we may come to a place where we recognize that we shouldn't be eating lobster.
Buddha and Jesus are one.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a nice little,
It was beautiful.
I mean, I started out kind of goofing on it, and then once all of a sudden, I think I maintained care because I'm respectful of people that, and it was fine. I mean, I got to do that. A few years ago, I went to Knock. I went to Ireland, and I'm always good for souvenirs, so I bought myself a little bottle of holy water from Knock. So I had some Knock holy water. Well, actually, it was a little low, so it was Hampton holy water. But I did take as the Buddhist priest is blessed in the lobster. I'm like, you know, I was a kid. I always wanted to do this baptism thing anyhow, because I knew, like, you grew up in an emergency, you can baptize someone. So you learn that in catechism, and so I kind of like, I was channeling all my younger Catholic teachings and started pouring holy water from Knock and Hampton on the lobsters, were blessing them as they're taking the bands off and releasing them. But I have to tell you, there's just something about watching people pull those bands off and drop $1,000 worth of lobster that Jay just caught like 2 hours earlier back in there. That was like, made it interesting. Knowing full well the next day he's going to go pull the traps and bring them back up and sell them again. Like reduce, reuse, recycle, whatever it was. These are recycled lobsters from
It was a very nice day. I don't mean to just tell you guys about all the laughter because we were laughing about it, but it was nice. It was great. But, cheaper than a ball game, and it's a nice thing.
It's interesting we're talking about this religious stuff because I've sort of been thinking about that, and I think about you often, prayerfully sometimes, and I was thinking we were born the same year, the same age, and I think we met in 71 or 72 at Seacrest. Yeah. And at that point, the word I would have used for you is crazy. And then as I got to know you better and got involved and I have the picture of you 18 right on my desk. I look at it daily, walking down the tracks. Beautiful, so solemn. It's beautiful, and there's this way about you. You're the most powerful, underspoken person I know. That idea of a humble brag is, and it just is a natural part of you. And everything that you say is not a brag for your ego. It's a good for the collective. There's a real big difference there. I really, and everything that you do is in that way. Even the way you spoke this morning. So then there's this integrity, and then there's this courage, and then there's this grace, and all of that I'm just so deeply inspired by, and have been for 50 years. I mean, I love you, and I think it's very likely I'm going to be in Italy in a couple of weeks, and if it's okay with you, I'm going to be lighting candles for you all over Italy, in some of my most precious places, and thinking about you. Yeah, thank you.
Donna, maybe you'll get a nun's habit, like the old
I think that would be perfect, actually, right about now. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
Renny could recommend a store in the Vatican.
Plenty of them. It's great. I want to say something else after all of this. I think.
Can you speak up a little, Jay? Some of us at this end of the table
I think that what Renny really is for me is that there's so much love and compassion in his heart, and I don't really have the words to express it. But I think that's what his power and his grace is, and you articulated it a bit, but I think it's just plain, simple, old-fashioned compassion, and that's who you are as a man, and I'm so grateful to have been touched and blessed by your compassion, brother, and I know that that's something that you work at and you embrace. And it was great, it is great, and it always will be. It's who you are. So I think you brought it with you, and you bring it with you next time if there's a next time.
And we get to keep some of it. hang on.
And it's the world keeps it. It's just, you know, it was there before you and it'll be there after you. It's a part of you, but it's a part of many things. It's something about humanity, and that's the strength and the power. The magic.
Clam magic.
You got something from those Buddhists, yeah. God bless them all.
Yeah. Seriously.
I have something to remind you of, and you probably can tell it better than I can, but remember when we had the conflict between the city clams and the country clams? And we were in Boston, or the Marigold Ballroom or something like that. But I think that's when George Wald came to us. Do you remember this?
I remember doing stuff with George Wald, but
Well,
which time conflict?
Yeah,
Which
right. That's what I'm wondering. If
I don't
you-
want to resurrect everything.
Okay. Well, anyway, he told us that the Greens of Germany were modeling themselves after us, and we were at a possible place where we might fall apart. And he came. Do other people remember this? Jan, do you remember this? He came to us to that meeting, and he sort of pleaded. Maybe Arnie remembers. He said, "Please hold together. You know, don't lose your consensus decision making, which was so new and different, and be leaderless but successful." He said, "Please hold together because the German Greens are modeling themselves after you." And now the German Greens lately have done really well in Germany, getting elected into government. And so when I hear about that or I read about that in the paper, I think, hey, you know, way back, Clamshell Alliance with consensus decision making was working really well, so that these people in Germany were inspired by us.
You know, we had Howie Hawkins run for the Green Party president as the candidate, so you get old clams in all kinds of different places. It's the beauty of it.
Lynn, all I remember is George Wald talking and somebody trying to tell him that he had used up his time, like whoever was facilitating, and George just kind of smiling and saying, you know, like, that's nice, and continuing. It's like, I'm George Wald, I'm a big professor, I've got a Nobel Prize, I'm going to talk as long as I want.
But he was also a stockholder of public service companies. That one of those candidates. He was like a leading power in the stockholders for corporate responsibility. And I can remember, I was really touched because when we were in the Armory in '77, it also coincided with Public Service Company of New Hampshire's annual stockholders meeting. And George Wald, I was standing for office for corporate leadership when I was in the Army, and George Wald was one of the people who gave us like 100 proxies of PSNH stock. He supported my candidacy for the board of directors. He always kind of was. He was easy, sign off on any of those proxies. Anything you want, anytime you want to mess with my investments, go ahead. As long as you have to do with peace.
So Renny, the first time I ever really worked with you was on the stockholder stuff. So that was because I discovered after I found out that all the Cushings were stockholders and were going to the annual meetings and like nominating each other to be on the board and stuff. And I found out that my grandmother owned stock in public service companies, so I got her proxy and joined in. But thinking about that now, Renny, one of the things that I'm realizing about that story is your brilliance in figuring out how to bring information to people where they are. Right? It's because I think that so many people in what we now call the progressive movement or the left or whatever it is think that we have the truth and we want people to come to us to get it. And I think you've been always brilliant in finding ways to bring information to people in a social, cultural, and political context in which it's possible for them to digest it, even if it's going to kind of tweak them a little bit along the way. And I think that you've done that consistently in a lot of different ways, and I love you for that, and I appreciate it. And the other thing that I can say from working with you, especially on the successful campaign to repeal the death penalty in New Hampshire, is that you've also modeled the ability, again, to talk to anybody and listen to anybody and always give people a chance to move in the right direction instead of foreclosing the option. And that was something that you always were, again, brilliant at keeping that door and that window open for people to move rather than ever shutting people out and saying this person is beyond hope and beyond redemption. And you've been a model of that, and it's had an effect on me, and it's been effective. So I want to thank you for that and for what I've learned from working with you.
Thanks. I mean, part of the joy of all this, Arnie, is that you have, like, we share both the clamshell and the anti-death penalty stuff. And also the theater. I mean, I've learned so much from you. You really helped ground me in a lot of stuff in ways that I can't always articulate. But you're also, but the joy of you is like you like doing creative theatrical in terms of how do we transfer information in a way that.
But again, that's what I mean. To think about the, August 1st, 1976. That's an act of theater. I mean, that's performance also. I mean, it's all connected in this. How do you tell a story? How do you embody a story in ways that people can hear it and understand it?
Yeah. For the fun?
Oh, right.
Yeah, let him play. Let him play. Come
Mystical
on.
sounding.
The concert?
Soundtrack.
Is it the 10 o'clock concert?
It's Herb ordered this special because he wanted a really good soundtrack for the recording.
I wonder if people want to, we should say the name of someone who could be here or should be here but isn't. And Arnie mentioning theatrics just made me think of Eric Wolf. And I'm not quite sure where he is now, just if anybody knows.
San Francisco.
San Francisco. Anyway, I think here's
Toast
to
is
Eric
still
Wolf,
burning.
also being part of our successful movement, getting the word out to people.
I'll say a few words about that connection.
Okay.
On July 25th, 1976, Ron, Rick, me, Eric, and Roddy Welsh, and Tammy Adams, Jay's daughter. Ron had found this old wagon on a hilltop. It was an antique. And I was working on an organic farm in Marlow, New Hampshire that used draft horses. So we put together Dick with the wagon, and we put a tarp over the top, and Eric came in and we turned it into a rolling puppet show called Burnt Toast, Trouble in the Nation's Breadbasket. And we worked with a whole team, including Macy Morse, who helped us set up a series of meetings in village squares across New Hampshire. And we started, Eric was a puppeteer and put together this incredible script of a show about nuclear power through puppets. And we set this in motion starting in Winchester, New Hampshire, on the morning that Vermont Yankee dumped 80,000 gallons of radioactive water into the Connecticut River. And as we were canvassing through the town of Winchester, this one woman I walked up to personally, she opened the door, and I was going to give her my spiel that we're headed over to Seabrook to stop the construction of this nuclear power plant, while behind her was a television that was saying, don't go in the water. It was an emergency report saying no fishing, don't go in the water. The Vermont Yankee Nuclear Power Station has just dumped 80,000 gallons of tritium into the river. And she looked at me, she looked at the television, and she slammed the door. But, you know, it was, for me, that was like, okay, there's purpose here. And it, again, it chimes in with this whole synchronicity and synergy that we were embarking upon. And so we had an advance that would go into the towns ahead of us and say, you know, leaflet, bring your kids out to the town. There's going to be a puppet show, and so we did that, and it was just an amazing experience. And Macy set us up with a church gathering in Nashua, but we got over to Seabrook. Well, we got over to Hampton Falls to the Applecrest, and I think that's where we had our training, and some of the best apple pie I've had. It was really a good arrival. And then August 1st we got arrested. And then Eric got a job with the New Hampshire American Friends Service Committee. He was the chapter director for quite a while. And today he is the public relations officer in the San Francisco office of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers on renewables. So that's his story.
Hired, but.
Oh yeah, is he? Okay.
This, sorry.
Sorry?
Were you going to continue?
No.
So this is the congressional record for July 22nd, recognizing Renny. And for those of you that haven't seen it, I'm going to pass it.
By the way, Jamie Raskin, who's my congressman from Tacoma Park, was at the Muse concert in, I don't know if that's in there, but
no.
that's a
He's the son of Marcus Raskin?
Yeah.
Who was one of the people who was indicted along with Dr. Spock and Michael Ferber. So grew up with some understanding of civil resistance.
Right. Chris Pappas didn't put that in for you?
No, it was a different connection. I'm waiting if you. I want to know if Chris read it. Chris, I don't think Chris would put stuff in about the Clamshell Alliance.
I was thinking the same thing.
In the congressional record. You never.
It's better this way.
Oh yeah.
But Jamie said he's
in all sorts of ways.
So there are signs all over Tacoma Park with Jamie's picture and Tom Paine, and it's you know, it's become synonymous that particularly in the question of what is patriotism.
So I was thinking about, you've helped us, I think, at least for me, sort of reflect on life, right? Which sometimes happens when you hit a certain age. But I think I have felt very lucky, you know, from, you know, I stumbled into this daycare center in Durham, Little People Center, through a women's consciousness raising group that I joined because I was losing my mind in my freshman dorm at UNH. And I met Beth Davis at that consciousness raising group. And then you know, that's where my affinity group came from, was Little People Center. And it had to do with kids and nukes, right? Like, and cancer. And, but I was thinking about, like, what we did, because we all got arrested. We got arrested in the 1400, but I can't remember how many of us got arrested, but There's a lot of us from that staff. But we organized the parents to fill in for us. So for 2 weeks, parents did the work of the daycare staff. And sometimes I still see those parents, right? Because it was a pretty special place. It was where I learned about consensus, where I learned about really loving the people that I work with. I still see some of those parents, and they still remind me of when they helped Clamshell, right? Because they took care of the kids while we went. And then I went into the labor movement when John Sweeney was elected president of the AFL-CIO, and we were hoping for big changes. And I met another family there, right? And I've reflected on that a lot, how lucky I've been for all these people in my life. But I think the place I really learned it was Clamshell. I was at Little People's and I was happy there, and I still see those people. We still, a couple times a year get together, we hang out on Timmy Cunningham's porch, celebrate birthdays together. And but it was Clamshell that made me realize, so I have a big family, and it is not something that everybody gets. Like you say, you get to choose your family, which, yeah, but sometimes your family chooses you, and that's what I treasure. I love these stories, right? And I love hearing them, and I love laughing, but there's something so much deeper about how we relate to each other and how I think about all of you, even though I might not see you for years and years. So I thank you all.
Thank you.
Anytime.
More often, maybe.
Maybe more often.
Someone else is Chet Brickett and Martha,
Oh, yeah.
who have both passed away. But Chet always said, we have to speak up for the people who can't, or even the creatures who can't speak for themselves. That was his bottom line, or his activism, was you have to speak up if you can, because there are sort of creatures and human victims who can't speak up. And Chet introduced quite a few of us to School of the Americas for a place to go to, a protest. And he died in 2001, I think in January, but in November of 2000, we took him, there were 13 of us, we went to School of the Americas protest with Chet. And so that was his last protest. And John Bentwood is a physician surgeon at Plymouth Hospital, and he and his wife Kathy are in the movement for peace. And John was pushing Chet in a wheelchair, and they accidentally got into an arrest zone. They were planning not to be arrested. So John, who's this really kind of wonderful but very staid regular surgeon doctor, got arrested too, which was not planned. So Chet had a last arrest when he was just months away from, he had colon cancer, I think. I know. He'll always, be strong in my heart. And then Rob and I went, I think 5 years later, because I had a bar and band letter, and my bar and band ended just one day before the next protest. So I could go again. I felt like, oh, I can go again. And now I had some of Chet's ashes. His daughters sent me some of his ash, and I still keep it in a locket. So I had the locket on because I thought that way, she wanted me to take Chet to any protest I went to by wearing the locket of his ash, which you might think about too, Renny. Anyway, no, I know you've got a cough, it's okay. Anyway, so that next protest that we went to, when it was like 5 years after, it must have been 2005, I took the biggest piece of ash and I poked it through the fence, because now it was all fenced off. Before we used to walk on and get arrested. Now it was fenced off, and you had to go over the fence or under it to get arrested. So I put a piece of Chet's ash through the fence. And then when they were tallying up the number of people arrested, I said, and one posthumous. Is that how you say it? I said, and one person posthumous. I said, Chet is in there too. You know, and they're not going to get Chet out because he's just a little piece of
Hard to put the cuffs on.
Yeah, you can't put the cuffs on that little piece of Chet. So Chet, as well as Renny, was always an inspiration for me. Chet and Martha together, that, you know, they lived the way they needed to live to be able to do all the things they wanted to do, and they lived without a car. Never had a car, so they could actually then like fly to Europe and, you know, go places they wanted to go. And Martha woke up many mornings to go work at Hart's Turkey Farm, putting turkeys in the oven, so she would be free the rest of the day, because somebody had to put the turkeys in the oven, ovens, plural. And Chet would be at his photography studio. And one time, before Ray Buckley was the state Democratic Party chair and all the baggage that goes with that, he was a young guy, I think he was 19 or 20, and he called up Chet one day at the studio in Laconia, and he said, "Do you know where Martha is?" And Chet said, "Yeah, she's home." And Ray said, "No, she's chained to a crane at Seabrook." And she and these Sisters of Mercy were up on the top of a crane at Seabrook, chained. And because Chet doesn't have a car, Ray offered to drive him to Seabrook to see Martha. And they had a crazy, wild, way over the speed limit ride because Ray wanted to get there before they were taken down from the crane. So a Chet story that we have to remember, a Chet and Martha.
Kirk and I were with.
We were there.
We were there with Martha and Christy and Eileen and Eleanor. So it was kind of like Kirk and I and the nuns, right? Because somehow like Martha and Christy had morphed into being Sisters of Mercy along with Eleanor Malala. So they get like, you know, the police like, "Oh my God, there's nuns we're arresting." You want to get arrested with nuns. That's like they completely don't know what to do with that one. Like, the cops are afraid, "Oh, my knuckles are going to get wrapped on the rulers." Sisters of Mercy. Well, you know, who knows what will befall them? And then they're up on top of this tower crane. What?
Chained to the crane.
So did they climb up with their long draggy?
No. There'd been a little bit evolution in the church and the habits that one was required to. They were undercover nuns. That's right. Secret nuns.
They wore their tenny runners.
They did. They were all set to run, but it was kind of, you know, you're a vice. I'm like, my God, I'm getting arrested with nuns. It's every Catholic boy's like, I don't know if this is okay, but we were doing this for a while. We're grown up. Of course we get arrested with nuns. They care about, we got the gospel with us on this one, just in case. Just in case there's some hard questions to get asked, to pass off the theological implications of our actions to somebody who really has got some paper and can explain it. Kirk and I are just going.
So Eleanor really had papers.
Oh, yeah.
Indeed. You know, I got to say, I think that was where I first realized, in the Clamshell Alliance at least, how important women were to the whole thing. I mean, I think there were more women that day than men anyway, weren't there? On the crane. And I mean, we worked with the nuns. I came through the Manchester Alliance as my local affinity group. And I got to say, when Lynn mentioned somebody important, I want to mention Jeff Brumman, because I think that was, I mean, he was the first person I met in New Hampshire. I came to New Hampshire in November of 1976, and I ran into Jeff and Ralph Jimenez walking the streets of Manchester on a dark November night selling the Granite State Alliance, or the Granite State Independence. And I put down my 25 cents and walked off with one, not knowing what it was. Went off and read a little bit of it, and I went back and tried to find them right away, and I did. And I remember that Jeff and Ralph took me back to the Granite State Alliance office on the second floor on Hanover Street, where Kate Walker was already there, and we climbed in through a fire escape and went up, because it was after hours, couldn't go in the front door. But women in the movement, you know, you mentioned Bette Davis, and my first wife is still very close to Bette and spends a lot of time with her, and it's the old Susan B. Anthony Award dinners and that sort of stuff. We're just
Founder of a safe place. First women's shelter.
Yep. I mean, there's just the connection, as you talked about earlier, between movements, between the non-silo stuff is really important. And that's a big one. Very big. But I do think we got to remember Jeff. Jeff was
Presente.
tremendous person.
So I just have to interject that Andrea and Fiona and I have to go off to a memorial service. I'm having a hard time.
Say something.
I'm having a hard time pulling myself away. But I did want to, following Lynn's thing, I wanted to say Guy would certainly love to be here.
He is.
Presente.
Yeah, so
Presente
I see him kind of sitting on the bench there behind Kurt. And I have lots of things I'd like to say, but I'll save them for the sake of brevity. And because I tend to choke up easily, so it takes me 45 minutes to say, a 10-minute thing, and that's not good in a gathering like this. But I just wanted to at least resurrect that. When I first knew you, first of all, I should say that, no, that would be a choke-up line. When I first knew you, Renny, you had that great Zapata mustache. I just wanted to make sure that Zapata mustache made it into the circle. That's how I remember you. I don't hold it against you that you got rid of it, but that was a really good look. Almost as good as the blue toenail polish. But I also remember you in some hearing or other talking to the judge with your feet up on the table. And I just loved your panache, and I still love your panache. And I aspire to one tiny 3 or 4% of the panache that you have.
Andy, you got to tell the story about the Keene Public Service Company arrest. Can you?
But first, Fiona's gonna, and we have to go.
Yeah.
So Fiona's gonna say something, and then.
And wait, could I ask her, before everybody's gone, while we're still 18, would you do a swing around again?
Yeah,
Because
sure.
I think Jay wasn't here when you did that, I think. Or somebody wasn't, maybe they weren't here.
Yeah.
So they were 18.
I will. Yeah. Okay, you go.
Well, I think I might be the only person in this circle for whom Renny has been a fixture in my entire life. And I feel so grateful for that. I think as a person growing up in rural New Hampshire and in this funky World Fellowship community, I've always taken people like Renny for granted as part of my growing up, as part of the fixtures of my life and the people who shaped my parents' family and my family by extension. And now as I get older, I'm starting to recognize just how special and unique those people are and Renny is. And I'm feeling so baffled by how I ended up here and how I get to look up to people like all of you and look up to Renny as we were talking about over breakfast, thinking about Renny as someone who has stayed in this place that can be so challenging for people who want to make the world more just and more inclusive, but it's where we need people like you the most, and you're someone who really inspires me to want to do that too, and to come back to where I've grown up and try to keep investing in it and keep making it more like the world I want to see. And I know that my parents and particularly my dad throughout my life has looked up to you so much and referenced you so much as a person and a father and an activist that he aspires to be like, and I'm so grateful that I've gotten to learn from you and to have you shared with me throughout my life. So thank you.
Well, I just want to say you've done a really good job helping your parents grow up. They're turning out really good parents and really good adults. And by extension, you've done a great job with all the extent with all of us, because it is kind of a joy. You're right. Like, I look around this. Look around the circle, and everybody's the same age they always were, because nobody ever changes. But you're like the one fixture, like you've gone from in utero to like full adulthood now, and able to teach us. I mean, the thing is, children teach. Jan, we learn all the time from people growing up otherwise. You help refresh us. You help teach us. Thank you for being you. Jeez Louise.
And we'll always cherish the copy of Willard Uphouse's book, Commitment, that you inscribed to Fiona, maybe when she was 6 years old. And,
no, when she was before. Yeah, when she was tiny.
Oh, good. Yep. Yeah. So that was one book off your shelf that came onto ours.
From Willard to Fiona.
Yeah.
I just happen to be able to carry it along.
So I do have to go over there.
All right. We're good anyhow, right?
What's that? Yeah, I'll come back. But I did, at Paul's prompting, I'll tell that little anecdote. So the first time I got arrested was at the J. White Crow Memorial Action in early 85. Was it May of 85? It would
April.
have been
85.
It would have been Jay's last court appearance from
Fiona.
A demonstration at PSNH in Keene. And a bunch of us got arrested that day, but it was, there were 4 men, and then I forget who was in the women's cell. There was Fair and maybe Tanny, and I'm not sure who else. But holding cell, Paul and Court and Renny and me. And I had just gotten back. I hadn't been there when Jay died, because in February I was on my first coffee picking brigade to Nicaragua. So at one point in the holding cell, Renny looks around and shakes his head and says, "Here I am in the clink with an apple picker, a coffee picker, and a banjo picker." There's so much wit and so many one-liners, but that's the one-liner that'll stick with me.
Me too.
As I pan around, no talking, just so I can get around, because I can't pick up the voice if I'm away from the speaker. Just a minute.
Smiling either.
No smiling. No smiling allowed. Look solemn.
Yeah, mugshot photo.
But I'm gonna look solemn, pretend I'm dying.
Somber.
Sorry.
So Herbert, we're allowed to talk while you're doing that if we don't pick it up, or just be quiet?
Well,
in action.
That's right.
All right, I'll stand by Renny.
But Herb's been such a part of my life, my family's life, and everybody's life. There's probably nobody who's chronicled the movements for social justice in the Seacoast and the state of New Hampshire more than Herb. And it's been a great gift and continues to be a great gift. And I know him back from the first Earth Day in 1970 when he was a biology teacher at Winnicott. He was still there, playing that leadership role just even then in the nascent. What is the environment? It's always been really good. And Karen's been a joy, and the family is just wonderful.
You've been an inspiration in every aspect of your life, so much appreciation. I was teaching your senior year, I believe.
Yeah, you were.
And gained some notoriety that first year.
A little bit.
Tell us about that.
I don't know which thing I did wrong.
You led students out of school.
Oh, yeah. That was my junior. Actually, when I was in high school, I tried to confront the, it was manifest injustice in how students are treated. I ended up getting kicked out of school because I organized a protest against the dress code of all things. We had a protest. It was going to be November 22nd on the anniversary of the death of John Kennedy, because you want to peg these things, and so we decided boys were going to wear dungarees or jeans, and girls were going to wear culottes or pantsuits, because we weren't allowed to at the time. And infamously, I do remember the vice principal saying that we couldn't have boys wearing jeans or dungarees because they looked like a bunch of farmers. And my friend Mark Nettie doing a leaflet in response saying that this comment by the vice principal was obviously, an attack upon the agrarian class.
Was that Byron Niederhellman? Byron Niederhellman?
Right. No, it was Mr. Bushhold.
Oh, Alan Bushhold.
And biting the hand that feeds us. So we ended up. So we ended up calling off. The school board said, "All right, we'll take a look at the dress code." So we called off the press. We called off the protest before it happened and declared victory. And then the next Monday, I came in, and the principal called me in his office. I'd grown my sideburns like down to here. I was lucky I could grow them down to my jowl, and then told me to cut my sideburns. And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, because I told you to. The rules were the hair had to be off the eyes, ears, and neck, and that 1 inch of sideburn was definitely not on either of on any of those places." So I said, "Well, it's not the rules that I just made up." Now I told him it was an ex post facto rule, and he couldn't do that. But I went home. The next day I came in, and I got to homeroom, and I hadn't cut my sideburns, but I got sent to the principal's office, and I got internal detention that day. I had to sit in the principal's office all day on display. And then the next day I went in, and he kicked me off and told me not to come back till I cut my sideburns. So I remember walking home, and then I walked down to the beach. I didn't know what I was doing, and I went back and got information and called the American Civil Liberties Union in New York City. And a human being answered the phone, because that's when people used to answer the phone. I explained, "Hi, I'm like a 16-year-old kid at Winnicott High. I just got kicked out of school because my sideburns. I don't think it's a good thing to do." And eventually, there was before there was an ACLU chapter. They were just starting. It was just like 1968. And then I got in touch. There was this guy, Riddler Page. Some prof at Dartmouth had the franchise, was trying to start the franchise, the New Hampshire Civil Liberties Union chapter. And they got in touch with me and then they found a lawyer for me, who was this young lawyer from Portsmouth, a young guy like he was 28 or 29, but growing up. His name was Paul McCackran. So Paul McCackran became my lawyer, and my parents had to sue because I couldn't do it. So they sued in the matter of, Cushing versus Winnicott High School, Rockingham County Superior Court. Then there was all kinds of little turmoil inside the school, because my brother Michael was a freshman, and they had all school assemblies trying to figure out what was going on. And it was I also remember the kind of a weird notoriety. First, my favorite headline was in the Union leader. Rebellion hit Seacoast School. And then in the Portsmouth Herald, they had my picture was in the paper because I had my sideburn down there with this big controversy. They had the school board met, and everyone showed up at the school board meeting because the school board's trying to decide my fate, whether they're going to back up the teacher or not. And there was this guy, a UNH student, a senior UNH who came down, who was from Hampton, whose mother, Muriel, worked with my grandmother, Kay, at the Sugar and Spice Bakery. They were counter ladies. And Steve, this guy who came down, his name was Steve Merrill. He graduated. So here's Steve Merrill. And,
Later governor.
Soon to be governor, I think. Stevie, whose memory, I have to say, of watching Steve and his brother I just remember I was like 4 or 5 years in. I watched Steve shoplift ring dings in his gym bag at Morelli's Market when I was like in junior high. It's just a small town memory. But Steve was like 4 years older than me. He was like, a big grown-up. They owned the lumberyard, and Steve was standing up for me, imploring the school board not to, turn their back against the young generation. Anyhow, I ended up going to Superior Court. I'm all excited, I guess. And then we get to court, and then the lawyers disappear behind. They go into the chambers and come out, and they told me that I was waiting for my day in court. And they said, well, the judges denied the request for a preliminary injunction. You get on the regular trial. We'll go to trial in the spring. I was kind of bummed out because I didn't know, the day in court didn't really mean there wouldn't be a day in court, but there were all these other things because it was all new to me. So I was a little depressed. I guess as depressed as you get when you're 16, you're trying to... And I ended up going home, and I don't know, was I going to transfer to St. Thomas? My big concern is, since I kind of majored, I was really... One thing I was bummed out about is I wanted to play football again next fall, so I didn't know the football comrades were concerned. My football coach was telling me I need to cut my sideburns. I told him no. But when I lost the case, I ended up cut my sideburns and went back to school the next day. But was interested in going back to school. I can remember Mr. Hobbs, Tillman Hobbs, just coming up to me. He was this old, elderly socialist welcoming me, and all my other teachers kind of welcoming me. And in the interim, there was a guy named Jim Pechewlys, who was a social studies teacher. And Jim and David Morin earlier had started the McCarthy for president movement in Hampton. So that was my first, earlier that year, was my first, my first political work, knocking on doors or understanding we're going to end the war, just get rid of Johnson. So I'll do this McCarthy. They were the ones, and they were kind of mentors. But Pechewlys, when I get kicked out for my sideburns, he grew a beard. And in response, and stood the principal down on that one. And Pechewlys actually was somebody who started the Wintertime Classroom Teachers Organization. Anyhow, then something happened. He grew a beard. I went back to school, cut my sideburns, went back, and then in January, the school board did away with the dress code altogether. So, I lost the case, and then I ended up being able to grow a beard anyhow. Not it was much of a beard. It wasn't too scary. I never got to the Zapata mustache thing when I was 16. But anyhow, I did that. But then the weirdest thing the stuff about Pechewlys is he was opposed to the war. This is kind of running. And I remember right in June 6th, 1969, this guy had gone to high school, who graduated, Steve Philbrick, I was friends with. He ended up getting killed in Vietnam. It was this time, when it's real, when, full cycle of season passes and he's back in a casket and he used to play football with and, do stuff with. And Pechewlys was really upset. Pechewlys put a sign on the back of his car that said, "Vietnam sucks." And his car was firebombed at his house at Hampton Beach. Then he was fired for saying that.
And in small print, I believe, and I'm told this, Vietnam sucks, the lifeblood out of American soldiers.
It was all about Steve Philbrick. It was all about how the war came, one of the ways the war came home from Hampshire, because Steve was like the football captain, he worked in the garbage. Philbrick was also, people know, Mandy Merrill, boyfriend, for people that want to know a little even more gossip and stuff like that. But he died and Steve's forever 19. Anyhow, Pechewlys ended up getting fired, and he fought it, and then he couldn't do it. He ended up settling. I think it broke him, but it was one of those you know, Steve, I always think of Jim Pechewlys as in a weird way, a victim of the Vietnam War because of his opposition to it, and it broke him in a way that it didn't do. And I remained close to him, and he was, in part, we had our differences, but you know, his kind of example of standing up was important. And the fact that he supported me as just a little kid taking on the school board was really kind of heartening and good. So that's my high school going to court stories.
Your first encounter with the courts.
My first encounter, actually, you know, I'm bookended, like Cushing versus Winnicott School Board, Cushing versus Sherman-Packard. I kind of like taking on I like that theater. I must like the theater. Thanks, Herb, for everything.
For that event. I mean, that went on for days.
And what was it again? I didn't get it.
Well, the crane climbers
yeah.
ended up in court, in the Superior Court, and Renny will certainly remember better than I, but it was a remarkable, unproductive in the legal sense, but very productive in the organizing sense of how that happened. I mean, the judge was, I can't remember his name, but he was
We're trying to, you know, put nuclear power on trial.
Yeah, exactly.
My memory of, you know, pro se is like Kirk Stone saying, we came here to prevent a crime, not to commit it. Laying down that marker. We just couldn't get a judge who was as impartial as the lot of humanity would allow.
Well, the theater part was to remember chairs flying around in the courtroom. I mean, they tried to clear the courtroom at one point. We just sat down and said, no, we're not leaving. And the guards started throwing things around. I mean, we had furniture.
Right, yeah.
It was pretty remarkable. They were not happy. And we just sat there. Pretty strange day.
Clamshell taught us pro se. Remember that?
Yeah.
We would go pro se. And people, I think, grew in many ways by having to explain themselves and not leave it to a lawyer. And that's one of the things I learned from Renny, too, in the Clamshell is speak for yourself, go pro se in court.
How many times do people have a judge say to them that old saw about having a fool for a client?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it matches the judge. Big hug, everybody. We're wrapping. I can't touch anybody. I'm going to get in trouble, but a big virtual hug. Love. No, we're not doing that right. Thank you, everyone, for celebrating.
We can hold hands, right? We can hold hands.
Keep hugging.
Let's hold hands all together.
Keep hugging.
And
so comrades come out, for this is the time and place. International night unites the human race.